Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question, and then I'm going to explain why I'm asking it. Would you consider building a homeless shelter in the middle of the Pearl District or in the middle of the South Waterfront District? The reason I'm asking you that question is because, although I support the idea of a homeless shelter, I have a real concern about the location that's been chosen. And the reason I have a concern is because it's right across the street from the bus station, a block from Union Station, which is a gateway to our city, gateways to the city. I subscribed to a magazine that several years ago did an article about Union Station up in Seattle and how seedy the area was around it. And the idea, it could be the most beautiful building in the world, but the idea of putting a homeless shelter right next to a gateway of a city seems like to me it gives that seedy kind of atmosphere that maybe the travelers won't understand. And so I've got that concern. So that's why I asked you the initial question, and then I'd appreciate it if you could kind of soften my concern, or if there's any possibility it can go someplace else or whatever.
We've seen each other in enough forums. I've come to appreciate and anticipate the tough question. It's a fair question, and one of the issues we struggle with in housing is where do we place facilities that often communities do not want. We don't have a strong demand in the neighborhoods to put halfway houses for recovering sex offenders. I don't think there's a neighborhood in the city that says, you know, yeah, we want our fair share of that. We get enormous pushback on housing that houses people going through drug and alcohol rehabilitation. And I could go on and on and on. And I understand that. And it's not that we as citizens aren't compassionate for people in these tough positions. It's that sometimes these programs have not been run very well, and we don't want to take the chance that in our own neighborhood someone locates a facility that negatively impacts us. So it's a trust question, I think, more than a program question. I appreciate that. We are doing two projects right now, one in the South Waterfront and one in the Pearl, Old Town Chinatown. In South Waterfront, we are going to develop a beautiful building that houses veterans, primarily veterans. And I will build that building even if it costs me my political career. Because there's one group of homeless that we have in our community that I think, of all the people on the street at risk, I think it's a national disgrace that we have so many veterans who served our country, are suffering from terrible problems that they encountered in their service, who are literally dying on our streets. And I will tell you that 47% of the homeless people we recently surveyed downtown, 47% are at enhanced risk of dying on the street, and the largest group within that were veterans. And we have a chance with vouchers and funding to build a beautiful building in South Waterfront, and the virtue of that location is that veterans can then take the tram up the hill to the VA hospital. The disgraceful part of this is I have vouchers which I can use today to build this building, but they are contingent on having caseworkers at the VA, and the VA doesn't have enough caseworkers to manage the homeless veteran population. And I said on Veterans Day at Hollywood that I was ashamed to live in a country where you could say that there are veterans who have a greater chance of dying on the streets of the country they defended than in the foreign battlefields in which they served our country. And that, you know, that is not right. So, as to the Resource Access Center that we are planning to build on what's called Block U, which is between the
Old Point Hotel block, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's between, to the east is the train station, and to the west is the corner of the post office, which I hope someday is Google's world headquarters. When I came to office, the plan was to build a full block Resource Access Center that had shelter beds, affordable housing, and a place for people to get off the streets during cold days, plus services built in. Well, I priced it out, and I frankly thought it was too expensive and not a good enough deal for the city. So I asked Holst Architects, who are folks that are doing beautiful buildings. The Belmont Lofts were done by Holst. There's a beautiful building called 937 in the Pearl. It's just strike. They've done these buildings. I said, do a half-block building. And instead of 2- and 3-story suburban form, give me an urban form building with a concrete base. They have designed a building that I hope when you see it, you agree with me, that's one of the most beautiful additions to our downtown streetscape. And it qualifies as a gateway building as you come off the bridge and you head down Broadway. It's going to be expensive to build, and I can't build it until the lawsuit over the River District expansion is settled. Because the fight over the boundaries has put a cloud over everything we do. We can't do much of anything in the River District until that is resolved. But it's a beautiful structure which will move dramatically us forward to getting to our goals under the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And tomorrow the council is taking it up at 10 o'clock. And we'll have a full presentation from our development partners. If anyone's interested in this issue, please come. And we'll be trying to get authority to go to the next step, but it won't be built for another 6 months to a year. I have consulted with PNCA, the art school, which is moving into the building across the street. Bud Clark convened the neighborhood advisory board. And everyone who's looked at this thinks that this building could be a net plus. So I hope with this structure to combat the sort of stereotype that you've alluded to, and to set a new standard for how we can do affordable housing that is also beautiful. Sure.
This is more of a comment than anything, and I've been reading recently about a concept called time banking, which could work in with recruiting volunteers for city services with the parks or whatever. And a person donates so much time, whether they're taking care of community gardens or helping their neighbor with a disability or something, but they bank that time under an account in their name. And if the city adopted this as one strategy, you could allow people to bank time and then use it, say, as a discount on city services like building permits or parking or rent on a community garden site or something like that. And in the light of our recession, this downturn, which could turn out to be a long time, this would be something that people could use without spending money, but which the city could facilitate. That could be a wonderful trade-off, you know, in getting people to volunteer and then to get something back for that.
Well, I love the idea, and we'll Google it and look at it. If George and you could connect before you go, we'll report back to you, but I think it's a very innovative idea.